Hello, heathens, and welcome to Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your fat, lascivious host, Megan Angus. And this week we are going to be looking at the astrology, lunar work, heliacal risings of fixed stars, and holy days past and present, and maybe future, for Imbolc season, waning moon in Sagittarius, lunar week number 4. Okay. If you have not watched the Imbolc class, you should. It's up for free on my website and my YouTube channel. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel to get alerts when the next class is coming up. Those Wheel of the Year classes are always free for the public, thanks to my incredibly freakish, fantastic boss patrons who pay for those classes to be free for everyone else. Pretty cute, huh? Folks who are subbed at the $9 and up level, that's Venus and higher, get access to the workbook for the Sabbath, the 8-week calendar, meditations, natal chart work, so much more. Okay. Today, Wednesday, February 23rd, for my patrons, we have Tarot Circle coming up. We're going to be talking about Imbolc season spellcrafting and spreads using tarot and all of that good stuff. I've got more tarot workshops coming up in March. Check out my website for that. I've also got more Wheel of the Year classes coming up in March as well. If you want to know more about this, you can go to my website and join my irregular newsletter. And all of that good stuff. All right, that's plenty of that. If you love this podcast, okay, last piece of that. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you. You can leave a review on your podcast service. That actually is extremely helpful. And if you are feeling especially heretical, you can leave a 5-star rating. Again, those ratings and those comments on the podcast services like Spotify, Apple Music, what have you, extremely helpful. Extremely helpful. Okay. That's enough of the shill. On with the shoe. All right, to get us grounded in our Imbolc season, witches work, all throughout this season, we are focusing on work around perseverance, purification, renewal, and dreams. And obviously, we've been talking about this for weeks, right? We've seen lots of iterations of this stuff. And in our global themes, in our holy days and festivals and things like that, past and present, what do we see? Very similar stuff. Rededication to spiritual practices, rededication to philosophical pursuits, renewal of the body, renewal of the spirit, renewal of natural resources, and purification of the body, purification of the spirit, purification of the natural resources. Getting all that stuff ready for the growth season that's coming up in spring. Okay, so brief check-in before we get into the actual stuff of this week. How is everybody doing with this Pluto return for the United States? This is something that a lot of astrologers have talked about, some witches have talked about. You know, first and foremost, I think it's really important to understand that we're talking about huge concepts, right? Big, gigantic power structures that are way, way, way outside the scope of our individual lives, right? For the most part, right? Most of us listening to this podcast and creating this podcast are not the president of the United States. We're probably never going to be, right? Possibly, but probably not. We're talking about these structures that are huge, right? But our lives are enmeshed in them all the same. And the fact that it's Pluto means it's spooky, means it's heavy, means it's a lot, right? And where that can go with Pluto is weird power dynamics, weird power structures, subterranean efforts, weird, creepy, ooky, spooky stuff sometimes. But Pluto also, for me, is the great transmogrifier in the chart. Pluto, for me, points out consistently, This is what needs to change. This is what needs to be broken down. This is what needs to, ultimately move from A to B. Pluto is the same energy as the movement of tectonic plates. Pluto relates to volcanoes, right? And volcanoes are, or can be, incredibly destructive, but also build new land by completely reforming the situation that currently exists. They create something entirely new. And then it takes time for that new reality to settle in and find itself and all of that stuff. So, Plutonic energy oftentimes is this very destructive energy, or this very intensely like overwhelming energy that is ultimately here to say, hey, inevitability is a thing and change is inevitable, and this is happening. um what is the role that you play in this? What is the work that you need to be doing in the context of this massive shift that is happening? What is your part of that? And this week, I think, brings us into a really interesting way of focusing on what our work could be. So let's get into it, shall we? Okay. This week starts on February 23rd with a waning half moon in Sagittarius at 5 degrees at 2:32 p.m. Pacific Standard Time later in the day and tomorrow for everybody else. So, getting us centered in our lunar process at the waning half moon, the fruit on the vine is beginning to wither. At the full moon, we had a fruit. At the disseminating moon, we have that fruit ripening. And now at the waning half, that ripe fruit is starting to wither. And so, what we're doing at the waning, at the half moons, we're square to the sun, right? Waxing half, waning half. We're on the other side of this conversation. And in this, we're asking ourselves, what needs to change? So we have a lot of opportunity here for change. And in that change, it really is about what needs to be let go. What do I need to clear out? And I might be asking that question from a point of what didn't work. And so, okay, cool, we gave it a shot. It didn't work. Let's clear it out. And or I can also be asking that question from a point of what did work, but I'm tired of doing it. And what was awesome, but I want to try to find something even more awesome. And so it's time to clear that thing out too and make room for whatever comes next. Oftentimes, when we are confronted with this kind of work, I feel like the suggestion in total is something didn't work out. Something was bad, something didn't fit, there was friction, whatever. And I need to get this stuff out so that I can start all over again or start something new. But I want us to think about, being performers. I want us to think about being people who are working on projects and there is success in that project. We are maybe, the metaphor that I always think of with this moon is like a performer that's like in theater, right? And they're in this play and it's traveling all over the country and the play is like wildly successful and they're having a great time and everything is awesome. They've sold out tickets all over the country. Everything worked out exactly the way it could have. It was fantastic. A lot of people would think, I have to hold on to this play and continue to play this part forever because I have finally found success. But what I think this Sagittarius moon is asking us to do is to step into being a little more brave around saying what also has worked that I maybe am hiding behind or clinging to in fear that I'm never going to have anything better than this. And where that's really sitting for us with the Sagittarius waning moon is in particular our beliefs around things, how we believe, and where we are basically hoarding belief, and in particular this belief of I let go of this thing Or am I, letting go of something good when it's only negative in my future versus, am I holding on to something because I'm afraid to let go of something that is working, but something even better could actually be in my future if I could get brave about that. And in this internal argument, we may have a lot of belief come up for us. Where we are fanatical about stuff, where we are very fundamentalist about stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have to be spiritual belief, though that's usually the realm for Sagittarius. But Sagittarius is just about what I believe strongly, right? What I have really strong opinions about. That's a big portion of what Sag is also pointing at. It's the stuff that we get real fanatical about, right? We can be fanatical about a sports team or a favorite band. We can be really fanatical about how we believe we function in our lives or how energy works or whatever, right? So this moon is starting off this week, within the context of this massive change that's being suggested. This Sagittarius moon is, let's start by examining beliefs that we are hoarding and holding on to that are perhaps impeding our progress. Even though they feel comforting, they're actually working. We're working against ourselves by holding on to these beliefs. Thinking about what things, again, even if they're working for us, could change to clear room for the future. We are in the last 4-ish weeks of spring. So we have the last 4 weeks of winter. So we have officially entered the shift zone. All of our moon work starts with a mutable sign and ends with a mutable sign this week. So we are officially in the portion of winter that is about shifting our energy into spring. And so a lot of our work in this portion is going to be about naming and releasing all the stuff, good, bad, neutral, and otherwise, that might be impeding our progress going into the new thing that's in front of us. Okay. For our lunar body work with a waning half moon in Sagittarius, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the lower back, the sciatic nerve family, and our thighs. As I say every week, do not take medical advice from a loud lady on the internet. Go to your trusted health advisor if you are wanting to incorporate any of this lunar body work into your actual healthcare routine. And for our plant friends, our lunar work is harvesting, pest control, disease control, plowing, weeding, pruning below ground. So this is a great week or a great day, for our winter harvesting plants. Again, doing pest and disease control indoor and outdoor. Maybe your indoor plants need a little aeration in the soil. Poke some holes in the soil gently to increase the airflow in the soil. Okay, what else do we have going on this day? In astrology, we have 2 different things happening on February 23rd. First, we have Mars in Capricorn sextiling Neptune in Pisces at 22 degrees. And this transit could manifest in a few different ways. So it could be a feeling of being much more sensitive to the needs of the people around you and super motivated to do something about those needs. Lovely. That's wonderful. This could be a day where it feels really nice to just relax and take it easy. And so your energy might be low on this day, but not like a lethargic, like, ugh, I can't get my shit together kind of a low energy, but like, I'm nice and chill. I'm just taking it easy. Everything is kind of just mellow and I'm enjoying that. This could be a day that it's really great for doing some spiritual or occult work or some study in that form. But this transit can also suggest a moment of self-reflection and a deep look at our motives in a project, the result of which might be a realization that something you have been putting time and effort into has been more fantasy than reality. Or maybe it's totally reality, but you are starting to come into understanding this thing that I'm putting a lot of energy and time into is not in alignment with my spiritual values at all. Ugh. And that may ultimately result in a big old course correction that ends up changing your goals. Folks that have been working with me for a while have know that I've been talking about the transit of Jupiter through Pisces. It's going to be conjunct Neptune at some point, and this whole transit is about understanding like what it is that really matters to us and kind of leaping out in faith toward that thing. And so to me, this transit is a piece of the work that we have to do around understanding what does not deserve our time or energy anymore, especially if it is not in alignment with our spiritual values, our ethical values, our philosophical values. So an undoing here, right? A shift, a change, very, very much in alignment with what we're already talking about. What am I holding on to that it's time to let go of? What does not deserve my energy anymore? And again, because it's a sextile between Mars and Neptune, this could be a very easy flowing conversation internally of like, yes, I've come to this understanding. I'm arriving at this knowledge. This all makes sense. I get it. And so on the same day, we have Mercury in Aquarius sextile Chiron in Aries at 10 degrees. And this is very much something that can manifest as healing conversations or information that addresses wounds or pain from the past. And I, again, think that this all sits really nicely together in terms of being able to say, like, maybe I did this thing to myself, and here's why I pushed myself in this way, or I made myself be dedicated to this thing, or, I decided this is my career and I'm going to push a lot of time and energy into it, even though I felt kind of hollow around it. This could be a really awesome day to heal some of that stuff as we also come into recognition of I did what I had to do, but now I can change and I'm going to change. And here are the ways that I want to change in the future to get myself more in alignment with what actually matters to me. And as as we were starting out talking about, where that also includes the needs of our family, our friends, our community members, we are ultra, extra, extra in alignment with the work that we should, quote unquote, be doing in this lifetime or in this moment. With all of that happening, where are we? We are in Carnival week, baby. Folks and communities that celebrate Carnival around the world have already been partying for at least a week or two. A lot of folks start a month out, but this is officially Carnival week. And Carnival is an amazing festival. I do talk about it in the Imbolc class just a little bit, but Carnival is the Catholic Church's annual global bacchanal and purification ritual, and it is most certainly celebrated by folks who are not Catholic. Billions of practitioners, and really I should just say billions of people, are encouraged to indulge in the sweet life and then purify through abstinence and mortification for the next 46-ish days, which delivers you to Easter. This holiday can overlap into Ostara season some years. Carnival typically involves public celebrations, including events like parades, public street parties, and other entertainments, combining some elements of a circus even. Certainly normal to see puppet shows and musicians and lots of skin. Goddess bless. Elaborate costumes and masks allow people to set aside their everyday individuality and experience a heightened sense of social unity. Participants often indulge in excessive consumption of alcohol, meat, and other foods that will be foregone during the upcoming Lent. Traditionally, butter, milk, and other animal products were not consumed excessively, and this is important, but rather their stock was fully consumed as to reduce waste. And this is something that I talk about a lot during Imbolc season, because fasting and going without is a major theme that we see pop up in a variety of Imbolc festivals and holy days throughout the season. And fasting and all of that stuff has a lot of weird baggage added to it by the Western world, but it is absolutely a spiritual practice that people have engaged in for a really, really long time. But also, there is an other element of going without that comes up in Imbolc season that I'm mentioning here in Carnival, because it sits with the idea of the excessiveness in Carnival, right? We eat, drink, we be merry, right? We jam down all of these foods that are going to be outlawed in just a minute. Well, part of that is because we're really deep into winter at this point, and some of those food stores are going to spoil soon, if they have not started to spoil already. And we are going to have to go without some of those food sources until it's possible to get them again in spring. Things like lard, for example, are an animal product, and that would have been something that was created in the slaughtering of animals during Samhain season, the third harvest, the blood harvest. And as all of those animal parts were processed and cooked down and prepared to keep people alive during winter, lard would be one of the things. That's the fat of the animal cooked down into a fat that can be used in cooking and for other things like medicine and stuff like that. And it will store for a long time, but not forever. Eventually, it will spoil. It's an animal product. And so lots of dairy products and lots of animal products and all that stuff were consumed at this time of year because they were going to start to spoil at some point. So this festival is known for being a time of great indulgence before Lent. We just discussed that, and this is why. With eating, drinking, overeating, overdrinking, overdoing it, and various other activities of indulgence being performed. Pancakes and donuts and other desserts are prepared and eaten for a final time. And then during Lent, as I said, animal products were eaten less or not at all, and individuals have the ability to make a Lenten sacrifice, thus giving up a certain objective or activity of desire. So that is kind of kicking off this whole week. And then, with that sort of in the background, Carnival really is, again, it's about this indulgence thing. It's about using up the last of stuff before we go into this kind of drift period before spring begins. But for a lot of folks, these celebrations tie together with festivals like Lupercalia. They tie into festivals like Saturnalia. And ultimately, they really are about the bringing an end to the forces of winter, bringing an end to the chaos of winter, the stillness of winter, the death of winter, and insisting life at some point. Insisting that the sun is coming back and life is coming back and all of that energy is coming back to us once more. So whether these festivals are actually related to each other or not, we may never know. There's lots of conjecture amongst various anthropological, historical, folklore sources that say, oh yes, Carnival and Saturnalia are obviously totally connected, directly connected one to the other. Other sources are like, no, they're not connected to each other at all. And on and on and on. What I think is really important is that clearly at this time of year in the Northern Hemisphere, whether folks knew what their neighbors were doing or not, everybody at some point or another wants to get naked and get loose and get a little weird at this time of year as we are drawing winter to a close and sort of insisting that energy roll forward into the next energetic cycle at spring and Ostara. Whatever it is that's going on, clearly, whether folks knew what their neighbors were doing or not, obviously people want to get weird at this time of year. So, nothing like that old time religion, right? Okay, so that's a lot of preamble for this week. These are all the things that are happening in the background of this week. Welcome. So now let us get into the actual holy days of this individual day. It starts off with the heliacal rising of a tiny little fixed star called Fomalhaut. It's spelled Fomalhaut, Fomalhaut, but it is pronounced Fomalhaut. And this name derives from an Arabic word that means the mouth of the southern fish. Along with Aldebaran in Taurus, Antares in Scorpio, and Regulus in Leo, these four stars make up the archangel stars. These are the four pillars of reality. They are the guardians of the great eras. And the archangel stars have also been characterized as the horses, like the famed four horsemen of the apocalypse, or the chariot horses in the book of Zechariah. But in Persian religions, this star is the god Zal. For Greeks, this star connects us to the god Typhon or Typhoon. For Syrians and Canaanites, this was the fish god Dagon. And for Egyptians, this was the fish in the Nile that swallowed Osiris's phallus after Set dismembered him. So this star has been pretty important to a lot of people for a very long time. And this star is also in alignment with the beginning of this lunar week. So if you remember back, we talked previously about the water pouring out from Aquarius into the mouth of the fish. This is that fish. This is that stuff. And if we push back even further, and we remember talking about the constellation Sagittarius and the arrow that Sagittarius is shooting, that arrow is ultimately coming through the waters of Aquarius and out of that and into the mouth of this fish. Big time magical shits here. There is something about the deity sending something out, source sending something out into the universe, and some part of us receiving it in a form. We think about that bucket of Aquarius pouring out water. That is also the breast of the goddess pouring out milk for us or our soul to drink in, to then become whatever it is that we're going to become in the world. It's just real casual symbolism like that. That's all we're dealing with this week. It's not a big deal. So think about all of that. Think about all of the stuff that we're eating during Carnival and all the things that we're taking in and the reasons why we might be taking that stuff in. Pretty cool stuff, isn't it? All right. From our Greek friends and ancestors, we have Diasia. This was an appeasement festival for Zeus, who basically was fussy that he hadn't had enough festivals at this time of year. It took place in the countryside to welcome spring with solemn but joyful celebrations and also to honor the chthonic aspect of Zeus. There were night rites with sheep and pig-shaped bread or pastry offerings. So again, here's some pastry stuff going on and more bread stuff. There was sacrifices, feasting, dances, hymn chanting, etc. And from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the holiday of Terminalia. Terminalia was an ancient Roman festival in honor of the god Terminus, who presided over boundaries. Terminus's name literally means to terminate, the end of the thing. His statue was merely a stone or a post stuck in the ground to distinguish between properties. And this festival would be marked by marking the boundaries of your property, your land, and then consecrating this stone to Jupiter Terminalis or Terminalis. This was done every year at this time of year. And on the festival, the two owners of the adjacent property would crown the statue with garlands, put up a crude altar. They'd make some sacrifices of like honeycomb and wine and corn. And they would conclude with singing praises to the god. This public festival in honor of this god was celebrated at the 6th milestone on the road towards Laurentum, a Roman city, doubtless because this was originally the extent of the Roman territory in that direction. So we're also talking about, yes, this was celebrated on people's individual property lines, but it was also celebrated as a marking of the actual end of the city, end of the territory of the place. And we've talked several times about how Romans were really intrigued and concerned with the genus or the spirit of a place. And so the idea that a city would be sort of this entity in of itself, and that the edge of the city even would be an entity in and of itself that marked, I'm the edge of the thing. Beyond me, it's not me anymore. I love that stuff. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. But really, this is about marking the end of the lunar year. We are coming into the final days of the year. All right, let's move on to February 24th. Okay, February 24th. Our waning moon is still hanging out in Sagittarius. So continue doing that examining of what am I really freaked out about? Can I be less freaked out about that in any way? Thank you. Moving on to the astrology. We have Venus in Capricorn sextiling Neptune in Pisces at 22 degrees. Now, if you remember, we just talked about Mars sextiling Neptune, and here is Venus. That's because, as we talked about last week, Venus and Mars are basically bumping uglies over and over again, a couple days at a time, conjunct, apart by a degree, conjunct, from now until basically the beginning of March. It's very sexy. It's very, very cute. It's cute. We love it for the most part. So here comes Venus having a convo with Neptune in Pisces. And for me, this is just daydreams, art, spending beautiful time with loved ones, having a leisure filled day in whatever way you can manage that for yourself. Have some tea and crumpets, wear a cute outfit, use the good lotion. You know what I mean? One of those days. Like eat off the good dinner plates. That thing. Just enjoy. Enjoy, delight your senses with stuff. Make some art, go look at art, be beautiful, hang out with people that are aesthetically pleasing to you, all of that stuff. Be in aesthetically pleasing places, etc. Okay. But on this same day, we also have Mercury in Aquarius square Uranus in Taurus at 11 degrees. So, as much as I want to encourage you towards daydreaming and leisure, I also want to say that this Mercury square Uranus can manifest as real zippy thinking, real zippy action. So the benefit of that is this could be a day that provides some flashes of brilliance where you suddenly have some really great ideas about things coming out of left field. Wow, cool. I don't know where that idea came from, but it's a great idea. It can be a very stimulating day, mentally speaking. And so daydreaming in that place, making art from that place could be really dynamic and really incredible. Where can this square get a little funky? It can totally screw up your plans. It can totally bring some radical element out of left field that's like, we got to scrap the whole plan and veer off in a totally different direction. Travel might be really goofy on this day. So be careful, leave the house, with an extra 10 or 15 minutes just in case there's some goofy bullshit going on during your commute. Things could be moving so quickly that we start to move a little too quickly for ourselves. So if you're feeling rushed physically, if you're feeling rushed mentally, slow it down. What do I always say? Put yourself in timeout. Take a few deep breaths, do your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1s, all of that kind of stuff. Just like, don't get caught up in the freaky flow. Feel free to pull yourself out of the freaky flow whenever you need to. Be careful. Be physically careful on this day, truly. But also, back to those flashes of brilliance, this is not a great day for action. This isn't a great day for like, here's the plan and now I'm going to start doing stuff. But it's a fantastic day for letting those flashes of brilliance come in and working on the plan and laying out the blueprint and having some really incredible dynamic insights about what we might be able to include in the plan. That's very, very useful. Very useful. Okay. Our holy days for February 24th. We have the fixed star heliacal rising of Deneb Adige. This is a star that is found in the constellation of the Swan, and this is the tail of the Swan. Not too much more fancy stuff to say about it, but there's that. Also on this day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the holiday of the Regifugium. This word, the Regifugium, means the flight of the king, or Fugalia or Fugalia, which is the festival of the flight. So in this festival, there is a Rex Sacrorum, which means a fake king, a sacred king, but that word can also be translated into sacrificial king. And they played as a substitute for the actual king of Rome in various religious festivals where that king might come into some kind of a sketchy situation. So they would just have this other person do it instead. But nevertheless, they were bound to offer a public sacrifice on this date. They were sort of bound to play the king in all of these really important religious moments. And so the flight of the king specifically was described officially as the swift exit the proxy king was required to make from that place of public business if and when that real king's reign was ending. And also, when we dig deeper into some of the traditions around the Regifugium, the king literally had to run to the end of town. This fake or sacrificial king had to run to the end of the city, run to where the Terminalia would be happening. So there's clearly some kind of connection between these various festivals of like this proxy king making a sacrifice and then running to the edge of town where then this festival is taking place that's marking the end, right? The end of the thing, that stuff. All right, let us move on to February 25th. All right, February 25th, our waning moon enters Capricorn. So, where we were working on examining beliefs that we are hoarding in our Sagittarius waning moon, now in our Capricorn waning moon, we are looking at where we are hoarding physical resources. And before I go forward, let me say, I fully recognize and understand that we are in some wild ass times right now. We have so many things in our world, as I say every week, that are really encouraging us to be paranoid, skeptical, greedy, defensive, all of that stuff, right? Very territorial about things. And so I want to gently and lovingly encourage you to gently and lovingly open up this conversation with yourself. This might be work that you need to do very quietly alone with yourself. Because what I want you to do is examine whatever your internal conflicts are around sharing resources. You may have some very, very valid conflict around that. We are not here to judge why do I feel this way, we're not here to judge what we feel around this. We want to simply examine it and open up the conversation and to say to ourselves, when I say sharing resources, what all do I feel? What all comes up for me? What does my mind and intellect want to insist? When I say that phrase, where do I feel it in my body? What type of emotions are coming forward for me? All of that stuff. What would I fight for, right? What do I get passionate about when I'm thinking about sharing resources? Am I fundamentally freaked out? Am I fundamentally excited but confused, right? Like that stuff. Again, this might be work that we need to keep really private because some really murky, ooky spooky stuff might come up. Some yucky stuff might come up that's like, ooh, that's in me. Sure, it is. None of us are perfect. All of us have some funky stuff in us somewhere. Allowing those voices to come up to the surface and speak, vitally important to transforming them into something that is more progressive, that's healthy, or understanding what that shadow is here to do for us and how it's been helping us this whole time, right? When we're talking about something like sharing resources and feelings of like greed or avarice or paranoia or territorialness or like, I must clutch and cling to this thing, my stuff, right? Allow that to speak first and foremost. And then if you feel like you have capacity for it, gently and lovingly ask yourself, why all might I feel this way? What has happened to me in my life where I now feel like I really have to protect my resources and I have to be really defensive and territorial about my stuff? Has some gnarly shit happened to me maybe? And that's why I have arrived at this place currently? It could be. But if we don't examine the shadow around sharing our resources as we go forward in the most pragmatic, situations, in places where we really have to or need to begin sharing material resources with our friends, our family, our community members, this shadow stuff is going to come up for us. We're going to be suspicious of people. We're going to be wary of situations. And maybe it's appropriate and maybe it isn't, right? But if we haven't examined it, then that stuff's just going to come up on autopilot for us. So this is a moon where I am inviting you to come in and have this funky ass conversation with yourself and your shadow around what are my conflicts when it comes to sharing resources. That stuff. We don't have to come to any solutions. We don't have to come to any kind of a remedy here. This is just let me open up this dialogue and see, is there anything here that I can let go of? Is there any opinion, belief, or experience from the past that I can say, okay, you protected me to here, but I don't want to work with you going forward if it's at all possible. That stuff. It's always really light and casual with me. We keep it really chill. So here it is again. Just examining your deepest fears around sharing your resources in a time of scarcity. No big deal, guys. It's okay. She cackles maniacally. Okay. For our lunar body work, when we are in a waning moon in Capricorn, we are relaxing, resting, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring our bones, our hair, our nails, our teeth. So for hair and nails, obviously, if you've got some sort of strengthening or fortifying treatments, cool, yummy, lovely. Same for the skin, honestly. But in particular, is it time to boost your calcium? That kind of stuff. Think about your skeletal system, my friend. Okay. And then for our plant body work, we are maintaining or breaking down old containers, old borders, old fences, old beds, old structures. Now, February 25th is a Friday. So we are coming into this waning moon in Capricorn on the weekend. We'll have it Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And this is really if you have outdoor gardening space, if it's a windowsill, if it's a strip next to your apartment building or whatever it is, this is a really great weekend to go out and see what can be salvaged and used in the next growth cycle, or what needs to just be broken down, torn apart, and composted or cannibalized into the next thing, or, get it out of there entirely. We're not trying to necessarily start plants right now. We're not doing any of that kind of stuff. What we're doing is we're clearing out the old, right? Just like this whole week, we are clearing out the old. We're looking through the old and seeing what could be useful and happily cannibalizing it. But if it's not useful, get it out of here. Put it in the compost. Okay. We do not have any astrology for February 25th. So let's get directly into the holy days of February 25th. We have up in the sky the heliacal rising of the fixed star Sarachbia. This is in the right arm of the water bearer, aka Aquarius, and it means the luck of the homes or the luck of tents. It can also mean a lucky place of seclusion. It can also be called the lucky star of hidden things. So, in some forms of astrology, it indicates the ability to discover that which is hidden or lost, especially when the star is emerging from the sun's rays, aka the heliacal rising on this day. And what this image relates to are like worms coming up from the underground in the garden because it's finally starting to get warm enough that the ground is beginning to defrost and they can finally come up. And that's going to be physically true for some of us in the northern hemisphere. Definitely not true for some of us at this time of year. It's very, very cold and frozen still in some places. But think about the metaphor of these chthonic energies sort of coming back to the surface, or these earth energies coming back, slowly coming back up to the surface as a sign of growth time is coming. Growth time is on the way. This heliacal rising also marks a really fantastic time for making moves, entering new ventures, and a likelihood of general success in enterprises. And again, we have other things going on. Our moon is waning. We're about to have a new moon. So I, I still think that this is a really great time for formulating the plan, but there might be a symbolic gesture that is appropriate for this day in alignment with this heliacal rising. That's like, here's the symbol of the project starting. Boom. I'm not physically putting the first brick into place just yet, but maybe we are picking the first brick that's going to go in today. That metaphor. Okay. Other holy days that are happening on this day from our Chinese friends and ancestors, we have the birth of Mother Earth. From our Egyptian friends and ancestors, we have the day of Mut, who is also a profound mother goddess within the Egyptian pantheon. And from our Moroccan friends and ancestors, we have the time of the old woman, which connects really closely to another holiday that we are about to talk about closer to the end of the week, from our Georgian and Slavic friends. So, I'll save that until we get to there. Okay, let's go on to the next day, shall we? All right, February 26th, we still have our waning moon hanging out in Capricorn. So we are still breaking down old planters outside and old weird constructs inside. And we have no astrology for this day, so let us go directly to the holy day. And the holy day that I have for this day technically may or may not be on this day. So this might actually be a day where we have no holy days. So if you would like to observe it that way, you are free to, because that doesn't happen very often. But from our Native American Oneida friends and ancestors, we have Wata Kwayu Kwatho, and I apologize if I mispronounced that. This ceremony is held after the first thunder, which wakes up the maple trees. This festival is held somewhere towards the end of February, the beginning of March, and it is when the first thunderstorms start to appear and roll through. And we know that Imbolc season is a stormy time of year. And so this marks that. When the warm winds once again begin to circulate, a day is set aside to give thanks. This ceremony, as I said, is usually held at the end of February or the first part of March. A tobacco burning is done to honor the maple trees. Each camp in the community will have their own tobacco burning. A small fire is built near a maple tree. The words in the tobacco burning ask for all of creation for a safe time while the people are in the woods working. And so protecting the people, but also protecting the trees, protecting the land itself, and calling on the creator to assure that no great harm comes to those harvesting the sap or the trees themselves. And all of creation is acknowledged in that ceremony. And then the people can go out and set up their sugar camps. Maple syrup can only be harvested at this time of year. It happens regionally for a few weeks, somewhere from February to April, because what is required are freezing nights and not freezing but warmer days. And that is what gets the maple sap to rise up in the tree and then sink back down and rise up and sink back down. And ultimately they're able to to harvest the sap from the tree, and that's maple syrup. Maple trees grow all over the world, but they are only able to produce syrup in these regions that have this particular weather experience. So, climate change, um, yeah, could get a little awkward there. Maybe it's time for an ad. But before that, how about an ad? Okay. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you a bajillion billion times. See, the sirens are going off even as I say it. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys don't even know. You don't even know. Thank you so much. You can sub for as little as $1 if you just think this podcast is dope and you want to support it. I don't run ads on the podcast, partly because I don't want to, and partly because I won't get paid even if I do. So screw them, man. You can sub, as I said, for as little as $1 or $5, even if you want to just support the podcast. And this is plenty of information. But if you want even more information, extra podcasts, extra videos, extra information about the Wheel of the Year, magical practices, tarot, etc., subbing at the higher levels, you get all kinds of cool free stuff. And at the even higher levels, you get free readings every month with me to be able to integrate all of this information into your personal life based on what's going on in your natal chart and all of that other good stuff. Join and change your life forever. Or, whatever. Thanks so much for the support. If you can't support financially, I completely understand because life sucks on Earth right now. It's too expensive for everything. Tell a friend, share it on social media, give it a thumbs up. If you're feeling especially hedonistic, you can leave a rating or a review. All right, that's the end of the ad. Let's get back to the podcast. All right, that brings us to February 27th, wherein we find the balsamic moon in Capricorn at 23 degrees at 12:05 a.m. Pacific Standard Time later in the day for everybody else around the planet. So when our moon reaches the balsamic phase, what are we doing? Well, balsamic to me, of course, makes me think about the vinegar, so sour, but truly a distillation is what we're doing at this point in the moon. This is a really fantastic time to kind of look back over, yes, the last month, but we could also be looking back over winter. We could be looking back over the last few seasons or years or whatever and really think to ourselves, what have we learned and what comes next? At the balsamic moon, we're in the last phase before the new moon. And then just after the new moon, the first phase is the crescent moon. And the balsamic and the crescent moon are very similar to each other in that they pull on each other in a sense. Because here at the balsamic moon, we are really ready to distill down what we have learned out of our process and are super focused on what's coming next. What are we going to do with this information? What are we going to do with this energy? And then when we move into the crescent moon after the new moon, we're kind of still tied to the past a little bit and sort of thinking about is there anything I should be bringing through from the past? Do I really want to change? Am I really trying to move forward? That thing. Okay. So here at the balsamic moon, again, we are reviewing and specifically we are distilling our experiences down into something very concentrated that we just have to take a little sip from and boom, we get the effect. Okay. So this is a fantastic time, again, to begin to build the blueprint on how you are going to bridge the possible with the impossible. And I want to super duper encourage you to challenge your courage and your ingenuity. With Capricorn, we are not necessarily trying to get into the super ultra fantasy of it all. We are really trying to think about, okay, so if I was going to fly, what would I actually need to build to be able to do that? It's that thing, right? We're not letting go of this fantastical goals, the goals that we have. We're not letting go of that, but we are taking a moment to try to distill down all of our experiences and go, okay, well, let me think about my failures and my successes from the past and think, if I was really going to try to do this batshit crazy idea, what would have to happen? That thing. And start to put some of those practical pieces into the blueprint. But then later in the day, this balsamic moon enters Aquarius at 10:35 a.m. Pacific Standard Time later in the day for everybody else. And so this is where, yes, now, a few hours later, we want to start to think about the fantasy of it again. We want to be thinking about the future. We might want to read some science fiction. We might want to, more importantly and influentially, I think, read about humanitarian efforts that are changing the world for the better. And really be inspired by some of these people that are kind of like thwarting the gravitational pull of our bummer current reality and being like, no, there's a better day. We're doing this. Shine bright, right? That thing. So this moon work on February 27th is asking us to start out practical around the fantasy and then go ahead and move back into, no, let's really get scientifically fantastical about this. Like, like, what are people doing in the world to change things for the better? What crazy humanitarian efforts that are like super huge or really wild or very surprising? What's going on out there? I want to know. And allow yourself to be inspired by that. For our plant body work, as this balsamic moon enters Aquarius, for our lunar body work, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the legs, especially the knees and ankles. And for our plant body work, we are harvesting, we're doing pest control, disease control, plowing, and weeding for below ground health. We have no astrology of note for this day, and our only holy day that we have of this is part of the Carnival Lenten cycle, and this is Meat Fair Sunday, marked by the Orthodox Church. Some folks that practice Carnival festivals who are not Catholic know all of these little pieces, but a lot of folks don't. But the hardcore Catholics are like, yes, there's like 18 parts to this. So the Sunday of the Last Judgment is the third Sunday of a 3-week period prior to the commencement of Great Lent. This is the last day that meat can be eaten before the Lenten fast. And again, there is a real heavy emphasis here on purification, emptying out the body, detoxing, cleansing, all that stuff. You know where I stand on all that stuff. But as a spiritual practice, there's stuff going on there. And then, as we said at the beginning of the podcast, this is also about food safety. This is also about, hey, that bacon has been hanging out on a hook in the basement for 4 months. We should probably eat it or go ahead and get rid of it. So it's a lot of that. All right, that brings us to February 28th. Okay, Monday, I think, February 28th. Maybe that's a Sunday. Whatever, doesn't matter. It's February 28th, damn it. We still have our balsamic moon hanging out in Aquarius, and this day kind of officially marks the last 48 hours of this current lunar cycle, because our next moon phase is going to be the new moon in Pisces, which will kick off the lunar week number 5 next week. So, in general, I always encourage folks in these last hours of the moon to do nothing or to do as little as possible. And as I always say, I know we have lives and kids and jobs and dogs and commutes and parents that need our help and all of that stuff. I know. I'm saying, to whatever extent is reasonable and realistic for your life, lock the bathroom door and take a 2-hour bath. Hang out in your car and listen to a podcast, like whatever. Create some space for yourself. Some people do magical work during this lunar time. A lot of folks don't. Some people will just do house cleaning. And some folks won't even do that. Some folks literally take this as a like, nope, we're truly going to come to rest and like be in stillness for a little while. And then boom, we'll start the energy back up again with the new moon. Bam, bam. So I encourage you to take time out, slow down a little bit, be a little more peaceful, and then after that listen to your intuition. If you're like, "No, I want to do some magic right now and like get rid of some stuff." Cool, go with that. If you're like, "No, I want to do like a big cleansing on my house and get things like red D for this upcoming Pisces new moon." Go with that. Um the only other thing that we have going on this day astrologically is Mars and Venus conjoined in Capricorn, trining the North Node in Taurus at 25 degrees. And for me, this is, first off, it's a conjoining of Mars and Venus. So it is the thing in us that magnetizes and the thing in us that goes out into the world to go get the thing. So we have that plus minus, right? That duality energy that's really potent. But we also have it trining the North Node, and the North Node is there to stir our hunger, stir our desire, to stir our soul's purpose sometimes. So this could be a day that manifests as some challenging temptations. This could be a day that presents as challenging opportunities, like a door number 3 kind of event occurs, and we're like, whoa, is that meant for me? Whoa. It's important to remember that the North Node can speak to where our soul is headed or what is the trajectory of our lifetime and that kind of stuff. But it can also talk about the things that we just hunger for and are constantly desirous of and constantly seeking and driving after, whether we should be or not. And Mars and Venus just want to hump, right? They just want to hump each other and stuff, and me and you and the chair and this cake and right? Like, let's just get freaky. Given that this is also the official start of Carnival week, it's kind of great. But what I would say is just sort of sit with yourself and your hungers and your desires. Allow those opportunities of learning, of witnessing yourself and being like, wow, I'm really desirous of that. I'm super driven to go get that thing. Okay. And maybe you act on it, maybe you don't, but I encourage you to just be present with what it is that you are hungering or seeking or desirous of, and witness what you can learn from yourself around those things. Remember, this whole week is holding us in this work of, what's it time for me to change? What's it time for me to let go of? Where am I like covetous of things? Where am I greedy about stuff? Where am I hoarding my beliefs? Where am I hoarding my resources? And here there's a little bit of like, where am I hoarding my philosophical stuff? Where am I hoarding my energy of blending with other people, blending with my community and my human family? Or what ways am I sharing that energy? All of that stuff coming up for us with this. Okay. For our holy days for this day, we have a few. As mentioned previously, a little old thing called Carnival is going on in the background. This officially marks off the week of Carnival, February 28th to March 5th. Where we will ultimately arrive at the beginning of Lent with Ash Wednesday. Also on this day, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Scat. We find this star on the right leg of the water bearer Aquarius. And the word ultimately means leg or shin, but it also means wish. So here yet again, as we move through the various fixed stars connected to the constellation of Aquarius, we find all of these fixed stars that are like, make a wish. This is the moment of the lucky one here, the lucky one there, da-da-da-da-da. So again, we are held in this time period of like, it's fantastic to be letting go of the things that are not serving you anymore, even if that feels scary, even if that feels a little destabilizing or very destabilizing. Letting go of the things that don't serve you, letting go of the things that do not deserve your energy, your time, and in particular, letting go of the things that are not in alignment with your spiritual goals. That stuff. Very, very important. But also putting on a goofy ass outfit and getting a little loose extremely important, okay? From our Saxon friends and ancestors on this same day, we have Cake Day. We also have Pancake Day from a bunch of different folks around Europe. These all connect back to the practice of Carnival, of eating sweets and treats, ultimately to get rid of a lot of those ingredients because they were going to spoil otherwise. From our Islamic friends and ancestors, we have the holiday of Laylat el Miraj. This is also known as the night journey or the prophet's ascension. And this is the moment that the prophet Muhammad is brought up to heaven and shown all of the wonders of heaven and brought in on a bunch of God's secrets and given a bunch of really cool prayers to share with the people and a bunch of other dope stuff like that. Also happening on this day from our Hindu friends and ancestors, we have Maha Shivaratri. This Maha Shivaratri festival is celebrated annually in honor of the god Shiva. This name also refers to the night when Lord Shiva performs the heavenly dance. So see, everybody's dancing right now, even the gods. This is a major festival in Hinduism, and this festival is solemn and marks a remembrance of overcoming darkness and ignorance in life and in the world. Core elements of Imbolc season: overcoming the darkness, leaving not knowing and coming back into knowing, or being the embodiment of wisdom and enlightenment as we move through crone energy and winter energy. It's observed by remembering Lord Shiva, chanting prayers, fasting, meditating on ethics and virtues such as honesty, non-injury to others, charity, forgiveness, etc., etc. Ardent devotees will keep awake all night. Other folks go to Shiva temples or they go on pilgrimages, etc., etc. Cool stuff. And also on this day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have an Aquaria for Mars. This is one of two horse races dedicated to Mars that happen at this time of year, one now and another one in March, just before Mars season or Aries season begins. But note, horse races, chariot races. We just had a bunch of that imagery brought to us by the heliacal rising of, does anybody remember? Fomalo, right? At the beginning of the week. So here we have even more horse imagery dedicated to a god, important horse races happening, something, something. It's funny because in the descriptions of the Aquarias for Mars, the Romans who were documenting them were like, these are wildly ancient festivals. We don't really know what they're about. We just know that we have to do them or we're going to get in trouble. So these Aquaria for Mars likely go back to before Rome was a thing. Side note, don't forget, Mars, before they were a god of war, was a god of agriculture. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that that's coming up at this time of year. Okay. Okay. Our balsamic moon enters the sign of Pisces. And as I said before, these are the last hours of this old lunar cycle. We're about to have a Pisces new moon. And if you want to do nothing at all, lovely. That's perfectly fine and fantastic. The type of magical work that we might be doing with the balsamic moon in Pisces is very spiritual. This is a perfect moon for chanting, praying, reading devotional texts, reading theology about your belief system, reading the myths of your people and your belief system. Like reading creation myths would be incredibly potent right now. If you're not a spiritual person, I'm kind of surprised that you listen to the podcast, but I do try to bring in a lot of science and history, so it's fair. If you're not a religious person, cool. You don't have to do anything with this moon at all. You can just hang out. Look at temples if you want to, but going on a pilgrimage, visiting a holy site, very potent stuff for this. But again, if you want to just stay home and kind of be in your own space and be on your own vibe, very, very appropriate. Doing absolutely nothing, still very appropriate. With this balsamic moon in Pisces, we are nourishing, resting, relaxing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the legs, especially the ankles and the feet. So yes, as I say every month, your pedicure is a holy act. Absolutely. For our plant body work with this balsamic moon in Pisces, we are planting, transplanting, and grafting flowering bulbs, biennials and perennial flowers, and vegetables and fruit or herbs that bear crops below ground. So, garlic, ginger, onions, carrots, potatoes, like all of that kind of stuff that's happening below the soil. This is a great weekend for doing, or a great moment for planting. And in theory, you've just cleared out all of the stuff from your grow area over the weekend, right? Of course you did. Okay. Okay. So for our astrology on this day, we have the sun in Pisces sextile Uranus and Taurus at 11 degrees. This transit can feel like spontaneous energy. Like, I'm excited for the change. The changes are obvious, and it's obviously time to make the changes. Let's go. It can be a stimulating day, but because it's a sextile, that stimulation tends to be like it flows, it finds its correct space in your life, that sort of thing. You know, when it comes to Uranus, we know that this is the zodiacal table flipper, right? Like, this is the planet that's like, I'm here to stir shit up. But with a sextile, our sun, our sense of self is like, yes, it's time to turn the soil over. Yes, it's time to move the couch over to the other side of the room. I'm a big fan of like moving furniture around in my house and moving plants around in my house seasonally so that they are getting the, I love growing plants. I didn't always, but I do now. And that thing, but it's also just a nice like moment for me of like, oh yeah, things are changing. The light is changing. The temperature is changing in the room. And I'm not going to be living my winter life soon. I am going to be moving into my summer life soon. And so these things, these days, these moments are here to like help us see the changes that need to happen and go ahead and lean in on making them. Okay. For our holy days of March 1st, we've got a few. First and foremost, we have from March 1st to March 9th from our Navajo friends and ancestors, the Mountain Chant Ceremony. The Mountain Chant is a 9-day Navajo healing ceremony. This is one of several major rites undertaken only in winter. Aside from curing disease, it brings rain and invokes the unseen powers for general benefit. So again, here doing work to the benefit of the community in total. Also on March 1st, we have officially Mardi Gras. This phrase, Mardi Gras, means Fat Tuesday. And it is the last official day of Carnival, though in many places that celebrate, they will celebrate until the following weekend, hence why this is officially Carnival week. But that whole Fat Tuesday Mardi Gras thing, right? We know what the fat part is about. That's that whole like, oh, we're eating our sweets, we're eating pancakes, we're eating the last of the meat and the fats and the butter and the milk and all that stuff. We're getting it out of the pantry before it spoils, right? But note Tuesday, okay? We're going to come back to that. This day is also called Shrove Tuesday. Again, same thing. Fat Tuesday, Mardi Gras, Shrove Tuesday, all the same thing. But specifically for folks that refer to this as Shrove Tuesday, one of the things that they are doing is ritually burning the previous year's Holy Week palms that are received during the Lenten process, the Lenten festival. And so these were palms that they received last year, and they're burning them this year just before the beginning of the new Lent season. And we see that kind of energy of carrying the old into the new cycle or up to the beginning of the new cycle with our corn dolly stuff that we're doing here in Imbolc season. So, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Also on Shrove Tuesday, we are eating pancakes and other sweets and all of that good stuff. Okay. Also on this day, from our Celtic and Christian friends and ancestors, we have Saint David of Wales Day. Saint David is the patron saint of Wales. Traditional festivities include wearing daffodils and leeks, recognized symbols of Wales and Saint David respectively, eating traditional Welsh foods, and women wearing traditional Welsh dress. Also on this day, from our Slavic friends and ancestors, we have Navi's Day or Vnuitsi. On this first of 4 days, Slavic pagans remember their ancestors in prayer. Today, Navi's Day, is the Day of the Dead. People bring sacrifices and invite their ancestors to attend their feast with them. And we had a whole series of those festivals from our Roman friends and ancestors last week and the week before, and some of those are still even now occurring, though we also have Terminalia and a lot of those festivals that are like, no, 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 the cycle is actually ended. We need to have already done those festivals by now. Okay. That brings us to. Wait, actually, I'll get to that in just a second. Also, on this day, we have the Global Holiday or Awareness Day of Zero Discrimination Day. This is an annual day celebrated on March 1st each year by the United Nations countries and other international organizations. This day aims to promote equality before the law and in practice throughout all of the member countries of the UN. This is primarily an alphabet family focused holiday, an AIDS family focused holiday, but really this has begun to stretch into awareness around discrimination of all types. So cultural discrimination, religious discrimination, genetic, racial discrimination, like all of that stuff is now becoming woven into this holiday, which is fantastic. Okay. Now, that brings us to, from our Bulgarian friends and ancestors, Baba Marta Day. Grandma Marta Day, or Baba Marta Day, Grandma Marta, is a holiday celebrated in Bulgaria on March 1st. This is one of the oldest festivals from pre-Christian Europe left. So we are striking right back into the heart of stuff. What happens during Baba Marta Day? Well, Martinitsas are created, and these are usually like a little wristband. Sometimes they are small yarn dolls or tassels or a combination of all of those things, combined by weaving together red and white threads. And they are worn on this day. They're given as gifts. They're worn on this day, and they are worn throughout March until either a stork or a swallow is seen, which symbolizes the coming of spring and warmer weather and well-being. And once the stork or the swallow appears, the martinitsa is taken off and hung on a blooming tree. It's common in the spring to see trees festooned with martinitsas. Now, why am I fixated on this? Well, of course, we love anything about the babas. We love anything about the grandmas throughout Eastern and Central Europe. All of that information. Fantastic folklore, beautiful symbology. But we have a whole bunch of baba or grandmother dedicated holidays at this time of year, because these are all of the thank you and goodbye holidays to the crone in all of her various forms. Now, what I think is very interesting about this is Baba Marta. What is that name? Marta. Well, we just are having on this very same day, Mardi Gras. Marta, Mardi. Are these words related? They are. They mean Tuesday. But who is the planetary ruler of Tuesday? It's Mars. And what are the colors that we are using with Baba Marta? Red and white. Colors absolutely connected to Aries and Mars. These are the colors that are central to the Nowruz celebration, which is the Persian New Year's that is celebrated on spring equinox when the sun enters the constellation of Aries, ruled by Mars. So Baba Marta is seen as a grumpy, aggressive, warlike grandmother figure. Her younger brothers are January and February, and she kind of bosses them around. She can be really grumpy and really angry. She doesn't like old ladies, so, watch out on that day. Or just like look cute and young. But all of the symbolism tying us back to Mars, right? Also a real reminder of like, we've been handed genders for these, right? We always think of Mars as male and masculine, but here we have Grandma Mars, right? We have Mars is always told to us as the god of war, but we know that Mars used to be a god of agriculture at one point. So it's always important for us to dive in a little deeper. So Baba Marta Day here, angry grandma for a change instead of angry grandpa. Angry grandma, um, mad that winter's coming to an end, is going to steal a few days from spring if she has to keep winter going. But can be appeased with these red and white charms that we make and give to each other. And they're basically kind of like we're wearing her colors. And we're wearing her colors until we see a definitive sign of spring. And then we can say, okay, girl, your time is nigh. We are in the waning hours of winter. We're going to put you on a blooming tree because we are transforming that crone energy forward into maiden energy and the blooming flower that is ultimately going to produce the fruit that is ultimately going to produce the vinegar that is ultimately going to, you know what I'm saying? That thing. Um, okay, so let's do a little roundup for this week, shall we?